I'm Joel Mercier, the producing artistic director of the North Country Center for the Arts at Jean's Playhouse.
And we are Johanna and Brian Halprin, producers at Powerhouse Theater Collaborative, a program of the Belknap Mill, and the resident theater company of the Colonial Theater in Laconia, New Hampshire.
We're standing in the middle of the soon-to-be-completed Colonial Theater, which has been given a multi-million-dollar makeover to bring this historic theater back to life.
And we are coming together to announce that NCCA and Powerhouse will be collaborating next December on a production of A Christmas Carol, the musical ghost story, to bring to the patrons of the Colonial.
In the spirit of the holiday season, we wanted to give our audiences a little sneak peek of what to expect next season, pandemic permitting.
So please welcome our very own Ebenezer Scrooge as he gives you a little taste of our very special version of A Christmas Carol. Take it away, Mr. Scrooge.
Oh, there you are. I'm so glad that you could join me. You know, this book is very special to me. It helped me through some difficult times indeed. Perhaps you're going through some difficult times as well right now. Either way, I hope you'll enjoy the story as much as me. It's the story of A Christmas Carol. Marley was dead to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead. Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Scrooge remembered the day it happened, 7 long years ago. Scrooge woke up from his terrible dream, unsure of what to make of it. Was it just a dream? Marley had passed away 7 years ago this very night, which happened to be Christmas Eve. Scrooge dismissed the thought. He was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge. The squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, made his eyes red, his thin lips blue, and spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. He carried his own low temperature always about him, and didn't thaw 1 degree at Christmas. He quickly shook the remnants of his dream aside and rang for his housekeeper, Mrs. Dilber. The woman arrived as quickly as she could with his typical bowl of porridge and typical cup of tea. Scrooge then dressed in his typical shabby clothes and headed out for his typical walk to the counting house. However, before he left the dank home, he thought he heard a voice whisper something quite unsettling. Scrooge, heed my warning. Scrooge arrived at the counting house to find his clerk, Bob Cratchit, already working in the cold, dark building. His candle provided little light for his work and even less warmth for his hands. Scrooge could barely get his coat off before the door flung wide open, and in walked his nephew Fred. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you!" "Ah, humbug!" sneered Scrooge. "Christmas a humbug, Uncle? Don't be cross, Uncle." "What else can I be," replied Scrooge, "when I live in such a world of fools as this Merry Christmas? What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older, but not an hour richer. If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips would be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through the heart." "Don't be angry, Uncle. Come, dine with me and Ida tomorrow evening," begged Fred. This was always a point of contention between the two. Scrooge had never met Ida and had no interest in meeting Ida. Scrooge wanted nothing to do with Fred, nor did he want to witness young love in its absurd stupidity. As he had done many times before, he simply declined the offer, and eventually Fred gave up and went on his merry way. The afternoon slowly crept by, until once again the door to the counting-house opened. This time it was a well-dressed pair of solicitors. "A few of us are attempting to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. What shall I put you down for?" asked the jovial gentleman. "Nothing," answered Scrooge coldly. "You wish to be anonymous?" "I wish to be left alone. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?" "Many can't go there," exclaimed the gentleman, "and many would rather die." Scrooge looked hard at the pair and replied, "If they would rather die, they had better do it and decrease the surplus population." The solicitors left in a huff, but Scrooge could have sworn he heard one of them utter the words, "Heed my warning," upon his exit. But it was no matter. The day was over, and it was time for Scrooge to head home. He begrudgingly gave permission for Bob Cratchit to take the day off tomorrow, locked the door, and headed into the streets of London, which were bustling with the lights and magic of Christmas Eve.
It is a lovely evening, stars shining everywhere, snow resting on the ground, stand all around, raise up in the air. London comes alive at the side of a winter's night. Eyes for sale,
Roasted chestnuts here. Warm yourself with some hot cider.
ravioli for a shilling. This is
Humbug!
Scrooge was not fond of the merriment he saw as he made his way home. He ignored everyone he passed until the sight of his hunched-over fortune-teller caught his eye. She held a deck of cards. As she lifted her head and her eyes met Scrooge's, she opened her mouth and uttered the frightful words, "Scrooge, heed my warning." Scrooge quickly moved as fast as he could. What did her words mean? Why had they been in his mind all day? Soon enough he arrived home and made his way to the bedchambers. He lit the fireplace, changed into his dressing gown, and sat down to eat the bowl of stew Mrs. Dilber had left him. However, this strange day was not over yet.
Good heavens! That noise! Stop that! Stop that! Wherever you are! Stop! 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 Come back. Mrs. Dilber? Is that you, dear?
Before his very eyes emerged a frightful ghost, and he knew the face. It was that of his partner, Jacob Marley. "What do you want with me?" asked Scrooge. "Much," replied the spirit. "Mercy, dreadful apparition, why do spirits walk the earth? And why do they come to me?" The spirit, who was covered in heavy chains, looked menacingly at Scrooge and replied, "It is required of every man that his spirit should walk forth and travel far and wide amongst his fellow man. If he cannot so in life, he must do so after death. He is doomed to wander through the world and witness what he cannot share but might have shared on earth, and turn to happiness. I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. Is its pattern strange to you? Or would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since." "Speak comfort to me, Jacob," pleaded Scrooge, but the ghost had none to give.
Your chain is eager to feed. You will be haunted by 3 spirits.
I think I'd rather not.
Expect the first one tomorrow night when the bell tolls 1.
Couldn't I take all 3 at once and have it over, Jacob?
Expect the second the next night at the same hour. Expect the third the next night when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look coming no more, Ebenezer. This is your last chance to escape. Your
When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that looking out of bed he could scarcely distinguish the transparent window from the opaque walls of his chamber. He was endeavoring to pierce the darkness with his ferret eyes when the chimes of a neighboring church struck. It was 1. And to Scrooge's happy delight, nothing happened. Breathing a sigh of relief, Scrooge stood up, only to be met with a blinding white light from the hallway. A woman appeared. Her eyes were kind and warm. She smiled at Scrooge. "Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold to me?" he asked. "I am," she answered. "I am the ghost of Christmas past." "Long past?" "No, your past. Rise and walk with me." In an instant, they had traveled far into the past to a schoolhouse that Scrooge remembered all too well.
These are but shadows of the things that have been. They have no consciousness of us.
I know them all. I remember them all. Well, it's Charles Thomas and Amelia Robertson and Natalia Clark. And over here's James Collins and Ivy Warren and that... That's me.
The ghost showed Scrooge one Christmas in particular, where his loving sister Fan came to the schoolhouse to bring him home for good. It was a touching memory, and made Scrooge realize just how much he missed his little sister who had passed during childbirth. But the memory was soon broken by yet another one. Scrooge was now looking at himself as a young man, a clerk of the great Mr. Fezziwig, on the night of Fezziwig's annual Christmas ball. Scrooge was laughing and dancing along with the shadows of his memories, that is, until the ghost showed him one last Christmas. It was a few years later, and Scrooge saw himself as a man in his prime with a beautiful woman next to him. Belle. However, Scrooge immediately remembered this particular Christmas and did not want to relive it once more. Before Scrooge knew it, he awoke in a frenzy. He was back in his own bed. Had it all been a dream? The clock ominously rang, and Scrooge could not bear to think what else was in store. But then a feeling of comfort came over him, a feeling of giving, and with it appeared a jovial and joyous young woman. She looked to Scrooge, and with a big smile addressed him. "I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me. You have never seen the likes of me before. Have you never walked forth with my elder brothers and sisters born in these later years?" "I don't think I have." "Have you had many brothers and sisters, Spirit?" asked Scrooge. "Approximately 1842, one for every year of our earth." Scrooge could only think to say, "A tremendous family to provide for." The ghost roared with laughter, then continued, "I am glad to see you have a sense of humor. Come with me, and we shall see what the present has brought for you, Ebenezer Scrooge." With a wave of a hand, Scrooge found himself in the streets of London on Christmas Day. It was a glorious sight.
A gift to bestow. Christmas inside.
The ghost led Scrooge into a small house that was unknown to him. There was a woman shabbily dressed in a twice-turned gown, darting around the kitchen, preparing a meal, while also managing to what appeared to be several young children. An older child, who went by the name of Martha, arrived to help her mother. But Scrooge still did not understand the meaning of this scene. That is, until the father arrived home. Why, it was Bob Cratchit, Scrooge's clerk, and with him was a young boy with a crutch. Bob seemed so merry, so joyous, so content. But how could that be? Scrooge paid him so little, and he had such a large family to provide for. It did not matter that their clothes were second-hand, or that the Christmas feast was nothing more than a tiny goose. They were genuinely happy because of each other and the love they had for one another. After dinner, the youngest, whose name was Tim, brought out his prized possession, a tiny wooden music box. As Scrooge listened, he couldn't help wonder what was wrong with the boy's leg, and whether or not Tim would survive. He asked the ghost, who responded solemnly, "I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die. What then? If he be like to die, he had better do it and decrease the surplus population." Scrooge was taken back by the familiar words. But his thoughts were soon interrupted by a new scene. This time, a scene he immediately recognized as his nephew Fred's Christmas party, the one to which he had been invited. Scrooge earnestly watched the festivities, somewhat lamenting his choice not to attend. He looked at Fred and Fred's wife Ida, and found himself once again thinking about his sister Fan and his own lost love. Scrooge wanted to stay and partake in the party games, but the ghost's time grew short. Before Scrooge knew it, the ghost had disappeared, and Scrooge was alone once again, listening to the clock toll midnight. Midnight, he quietly whispered to himself. The last of the spirits is to come. And sure enough, Scrooge was right. The final spirit emerged out of a thick layer of fog, all in black and wearing a porcelain mask. She was a frightful sight and did not speak a word. I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come. You are about to show me shadows of the things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us. Is that so, Spirit? Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any spirit I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear you company and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? The spirit gestured to what appeared to be a fortune-teller's deck of cards. Scrooge timidly selected one after another, each one revealing a scene from the future. Businessmen mocking a funeral. Peddlers joyous over the death of their lender. Then one card revealed a particularly frightful scene. A seedy group of thieves, fresh off their most recent loot of a dead man's belongings. The spirit continued to force Scrooge to select cards, which in turn continued to reveal terrible scenes. Scrooge thought he could take no more when one card revealed the home of the Cratchits, but this time with one less family member present. Tiny Tim had indeed passed, and the family's happiness was gone. Genuinely hurt by the scene, Scrooge selected the final card, the death card, which brought him to a grim graveyard. He was certain this scene was to reveal who the thieves had stolen from, who the businessmen were mocking, whose death brought joy to so many. The spirit pointed at a lone gravestone in the distance. Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of things that will be, or are they shadows of things that may be only? Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends, to which, if persevered in, they must lead. But if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Say it is thus with what you show me.
Ebenezer Scrooge!
Heed my warning, Scrooge! For else you are destined to repeat my fate!
No, Jacob, please, I beg you. I understand now. I see the error of my ways.
Scrooge vowed to do better. Good Spirit, I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone. And with that, Scrooge looked back at the spirit, but saw nothing more than a bedpost. And the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own to make amends in. Oh, Jacob Marley, heaven and the Christmas time be praised for this. I say it on my knees, old Jacob, on my knees. I don't know what to do. I'm light as a feather. I'm happy as an angel. I'm as merry as a schoolboy. I'm as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody. A Happy New Year to all the world. Scrooge was elated that he was not only home again, a changed man, but had not missed Christmas Day. He quickly changed and ran into the streets of London to partake in the merriment he had once seen with the ghost of Christmas present. Scrooge made good on his promise, offering his apologies and more to those he had wronged, including his nephew Fred, his clerk Bob Cratchit, and everyone else he had ever said a single bad word to. In fact, Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more, and to Tiny Tim, who did not die. He was the second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. And just like Tiny Tim's box played a song that was very special to him, this music box plays a song that is very special to me. There was a time I was a fool. Money and greed, my only need, were more important than the golden rule. I can remember, that's the man I was, but not anymore. Merry Christmas, and God bless us, everyone.
Once a year, we say a prayer for Christmas. A special prayer once a year for Christmas.
Skies clear, we pray for happiness and cheer,
and all wrongs undone.
God bless us.